So I'm Robbie Fogarty from Sunshine Breakfast. So I wake up Dublin at 6 a.m. and put half of them back to sleep by 6:05. Well, some of them stay awake for the show anyway. But we're here to talk about GEDI. So what is GEDI? It's not some offshoot of a George Lucas Star Wars spin-off or anything like that. We're talking about gender, equality, diversity and inclusion. And for this session, for the next 40 minutes or so, we're going to explore the opportunities for radio and its audiences in relation to content in these areas and how we can innovate and entertain with this content, which some people struggle with. So let's have a discussion about this. I just want to start off by quoting John Purcell of the IBI. Each day, millions of people across this country choose to make independent radio part of their lives. And we have a unique position in a changing Ireland. And we welcome, respect, and value diversity. And I think any right-minded person will agree with those sentiments. So I think that's important to get it out of the way. Many of us, or how many of us, have thought about GEDI because it's coming. It's coming soon. And in some cases, it's already here for a lot of the stations who've been part of the programs that we've seen so far. So how do we make a positive contribution to our audience with this regard? I mean, radio should aspire to be a medium for treating people equally and fairly, whether it's those we work alongside with or those we broadcast to. And radio has the DNA, I think, to connect with all facets of our audience lives. We are broadcasters, that's what we do. And we broadcast to everyone, not just certain individuals. Radio has changed radically over the past 20 years. And our audiences have changed with it. I mean, we have a much more culturally diverse audience listening to us these days. And with that in mind, a lot of work has been done by the IBI and Learning Waves in gathering information on this over the past 4 years with regards to putting a strategy in place, a framework and toolkits to help us as broadcasters deal with these issues and embrace them. In parallel, Comisiún na Meán has been working on a framework for the broadcast and the media sector. So with this strategy, we're talking about employing equality, human rights, inclusion for disabled people, gender pay parity, which we've heard a lot about, travelling and Roma communities, inclusion for them, LGBTQ+, and all done in a non-racist approach. A lot of stations have, and I want to commend the likes of 98 FM who've embraced LGBTQ+ for many years now and have made it central and part of their programming. Now, a lot has been done, as I say, up to now. There's a lot of information gathering being done and GEDI programs for training and journalism programs as well. And a lot of us have been familiar with the S&V funding initiatives, the Sound and Vision funding for various programming features, the likes of Clár Hours to Protect, MediaWise, and a lot of these have been run on stations across the country very, very successfully. There is a long way to go for GEDI, and I think a lot of it is understanding what our audience needs and what they want, and just understanding who our audience is. There was always this idea of a housewife with a child, 2 cars, 2 incomes. That's changing. Ireland is changing, and I think if we don't embrace that or realise that, we're missing the point here. So with that comes broadening talent, the talent base that we work with, thinking diversely about the content and the creativity to make this happen. It's something stations struggle with, others have embraced, and we're going to be talking to some of those people on stage here in a short while. Some of the goals we have are strong leadership in the area, recruitment practices, how we change those, how do we find the people in our communities who can work with us to embrace GEDI. And very importantly, and let's not forget this, we're a business as well. We need to work with our clients. We need to grow our business around this. How can we explore the avenues of GEDI to open new opportunities for clients? Along with all of this, of course, comes accountability, but I think a pride as well in what we achieve, what we've already achieved, and what we will achieve with GEDI when we look back at this. And finally, some of these elements align with the UN goals for sustainability: gender equality, reducing inequality, sustainable communities, and peace and justice. And God knows we need that in this modern world. I think all of these are very worthwhile goals. I'm going to start off with Laura from THINKHOUSE. Congratulations, by the way, on being a certified B corporation. That's a great achievement, which is a sustainability mark. And tell us a little bit about your role.
So my official title is Head of Sustainability and Planet Services at THINKHOUSE. We're a youth marketing company. And really what our mission, our vision is a world of brands and businesses and organizations that young people actually want, or that people actually really want in the world. And what I try to do is create partnerships for the goals, really, to bring about that world. And a lot of my work is around how do you reimagine the skills of marketing and advertising, that industry and the industry that we're in terms of creative storytelling for the world that we need and want to create. I have a couple of slides to kind of tell a bit of a story at some point, but yeah, that's it in a nutshell. It is how do you use those skills of creativity, those skills of community building that are nurtured so well in the radio community, and bring that into the challenges that the world is facing. So that's what gets me up in the morning.
The youth market is a very important market in the sense that I would assume younger people are more open to embracing change like this and embracing GEDI as opposed to maybe older audiences. Would that be the case? Would you have found that?
Well, I think what you hear from young people when you speak to them, our Insights and Strategy department is called the Youth Lab, and what we try to do is kind of bring the raw, real and unfiltered perspective of younger generations to boardrooms and to meetings. And I think what you hear is just like this desire for change. I mean, that's something that kind of is perpetual across generations. There's like a youth energy that, people feel like there's potential for change, and that maybe gets sucked out of us as we get older when we feel like, actually going about creating change is quite difficult. So I think what young people bring, and that kind of insight and storytelling kind of rooted in youth culture, brings with it an energy that's kind of full of rich potential for new ideas and creative experiments.
Yeah, very interesting. Aishling Heraughty from Ocean FM. I know the late, great Tommy Gorman was a big fan of your content on the station. And Aishling produces and devises content dealing with environmental issues in a very interesting and innovative way, including the Irish language. Tell us a little bit about your experiences.
Yeah, well, I make mainly feature content for Ocean FM, and doing that we draw a lot from Sound and Vision funding, and a lot of the programme we've made in recent years has dealt with the theme of environment, and really what we try to do as a local radio station, full service, is to bridge that connection with audiences. So, environment is kind of a scary subject for a lot of people. Feel powerless by the extent of, say, the biodiversity crisis or the climate crisis. But there are loads of things happening in every local area that are designed to counter that, where people can do something, which when they listen to kind of the overarching messages, it does seem kind of catastrophic. But what we really focus on doing is connecting people with what's really going on in their local area, what people like them are doing, what difference small actions can make, and those then provide a kind of a platform. Research shows that once somebody has engaged with a topic, even at a very basic level, they're a lot more likely to change behaviour in other areas or to get interested in other areas of sustainability or environmental action. So that's what a lot of our programmes look to harness, really.
Yeah, I mean, Ours to Protect is a particularly memorable one. I mean, Carol Dooley from Sunshine did a fantastic job with Ours to Protect, and I know a lot of radio stations did amazing work, and what may have seemed like a daunting task to begin with turned out to be a very enjoyable experience and got a great reaction from our audiences. People who were describing things they did in their everyday lives, those little things, those changes they made to help the environment, and were sort of brought on by Ours to Protect. So, we'll talk a little bit more about whether that should become a more regular thing or not, and certainly around sound and vision. Andrew Campbell-Edie, last but very much not least, 20 years of experience in the UK and Ireland, and very much a skilled communicator in I suppose, getting across a very complex message. What are your experiences?
God, 20 plus years, that really puts it in.
Sorry about that.
It's, so my experience is getting across the complex message about D&I, I'm just going to shorthand the GDEDI thing, is very simple. It's really breaking it down to very much like radio. Most corporations are about people. And what we're seeing now, more than ever, is that the value of valuing people and interactions and working collaboratively is coming very much from the youth. And that the effect of that is spreading through culture widely. So our message is all at the Irish Centre for Diversity is always, if you value your people, you should value what they value, which is progress with D&I. So diversity inclusion. And diversity inclusion isn't just about ticking boxes, and the work we do, it's not just about ticking boxes, it's not about meeting quotas despite what an orange person over in the US might think. It's not about ticking boxes or meeting quotas, it's about, and the way that we work with our clients is, it's about cultural shifts. It's making changes, real, authentic changes, incredible changes, and sustainable changes within a workplace culture whereby everyone will be valued for what the difference that they bring, for the different perspectives that they bring to the party, and in the way that that can then be harnessed to all the wonderful things that D&I does, which it brings innovation, brings recruitment contention, it attracts top talent, it has a myriad of other benefits and advantages. So it's kind of a complicated message, and we could talk all the time, the whole rest of the evening about it, but in a nutshell, that's what it's about. It's about valuing people and valuing their values.
Yeah. I mean, what struck me on the way over here this evening while I was listening to the radio on the way over, radio by its very nature is you can't see the person. So you take what they have to say and what they have to offer and how they entertain, regardless of what they look like or identify as. So it's the perfect medium, really, for this in many ways. You spoke about the orange man across the Atlantic. I mean, a lot of steps have been made a lot of forward momentum has happened over recent years, some of which is sort of going backwards a little bit, and a lot of we hear about big corporations in America sort of rowing back a little bit on their initiatives because of this. Do you think that will have an effect this side of the Atlantic? Do you think that we're strong on this?
We've faced that question quite a bit lately, and our CEO, Solat Chowdhury, had a very pithy answer to it that he shared. And he just said, if you walk away from D&I, again, shorthanding, if you walk away from that, you can say goodbye to recruiting and retaining the best talent who hold the values of DE&I. They'll just go across the road or around the corner to your competition who do value it. You can expect bullying, harassment, all of the, and all effects of and consequences of things like unconscious bias. You can expect those to come to the fore. You can expect to be in the Workplace Relations Commission. I can't remember. You can expect to be in the courts with all of these things that will be on the rise and all unbridled. So that's in a nutshell what walking away from D&I does. and it opens you up to that. And when the tide turns and people realize that this was all a horrible dream, and they have to roll it back, the authenticity piece will come out then. And so you might have a change of a policy in about turn 4 years, hopefully, or if not sooner. You might have to change your policy once the political tide changes, but then you've already been on a platform as rolling back. So how can you, saying that you now embrace it again, hold any water? It's just the authenticity piece comes out. What we're protected by, to a large part, within the EU, within Europe, is that D&I, and again shorthanding, is protected as part of the European Directive ESG goals. So, or SDGs, I always get confused. But it's the governance piece. It's the gender pay gap it's law. You can't roll back on that law. The accessibility piece, all of the protections for the protected groups in Irish law are there. They're enshrined. They can't be changed. They can't be rolled back. So, isn't affecting us as much. And it's interesting to note that some of the companies that made headlines, certainly in the States, for rolling back, some of their European branches have actually come out and said, actually, we're still gung-ho for D&I. It's still one of our values. And that's kind of happening over there. It's not happening here. So it's great to see that message is slowly getting out. And what's interesting is that the companies that are sticking with D&I are, in fact, doubling down on it. There's the reaction to the rolling back is kind of, actually, we're not that. We value our people, and we're gung-ho, and we're upping our efforts in that area. Yeah. So, silver lining.
Yeah, it's good to hear. I'm reminded of the final promotion. Niall showed us The Underdog, which was an amazing promotion. And by its very nature, was dealing with children who had been bullied, children who were maybe disadvantaged in one way or another, marginalised. And look how much of a beautiful promotion that was. Who wouldn't want that to be part of society and part of our everyday lives? Back to Laura in THINKHOUSE. You have some slides to show us, am I right?
Yeah, well, I was going to talk about some research that I'd done for a project called Good Life 2030. And so Good Life 2030 is a creative climate action project. So echoes some of, I think, a lot of the projects in that fund echo the Ours to Protect, I guess, mission as well. But it's a collaboration between THINKHOUSE and a non-profit that I helped to found in Ireland called Purpose Disruptors. And our goal as an organisation is to get the marketing and advertising industry to work in harmony with the natural world. And Good Life 2030 started out as a project based on the premise that, the stories that we tell in the cultural consciousness kind of tell a story of what, the aspirations of what a good life can be. And because we create those stories, we have the ability to kind of redirect them in a new way. And it starts, I guess, with the power of marketing and advertising. I think when I show this slide, oftentimes at talks, people generally say, I recognize, a brand logo more quickly than I can recognize kind of one of the leaves from the trees all around us. And the reality is that we're living beyond the means of the planet while not meeting the needs of all people. And I think if you don't really deeply feel that in your day-to-day yet, you will start to feel it more, because we're living in a time of complete transformation. It's a transformation not only of the way we live and how we get around, but actually how we view our place in the world. And I think that's really, really exciting for people working in creative industries like radio. But we need to change our relationship, and to do that, to change, this relationship where, especially in this part of the world, we're over-consuming. We're kind of living in this culture of reckless consumption, actually, driven a lot by marketing and advertising. We need to really change how we think about everything. So how do you start to change mindsets? I think a lot of the time these conversations revolve around behavior change, right? And, how do you do the governance piece? But when you talk about a mindset, it can kind of feel a little bit like, well, how do you even start to grasp that? So we start with this story of a good life. You know, what are the lives that we really want to be living? Because we are architects of desire. You know, I say advertising, but like the people in culture and media, you know, we portray, I guess, the narratives of our time in our day-to-day, and we reflect back what people, we reflect, I guess, images to people of aspiration. And oftentimes, especially in marketing and advertising, the story has been since the Industrial Revolution that a good life is one of more. It's of more stuff, which leads to consumerism being that prevailing definition of a good life. And I think alongside that problem and that story, we have the kind of creative problem around how do you communicate sustainability or D&I, even for example, like really well. How do you make that feel aspirational and kind of go beyond the politics of it all, but you know, do what we do best in terms of storytelling and really engaging communities? And it hasn't been done well. There's a room for more imagination here, and there's a room for what we do best in terms of community engagement, humor, surprising and bonkers, things like we just saw in the last presentation. And so we went out to Irish people and asked them what they really dream of and where they get their sense of well-being and contentment in community. And you know, I guess the word I think of when I think of radio is togetherness, and that is ultimately what people really want to feel. They want to feel part of something, spend time with people they care about, be active, fit, enjoy nature. And there were three, I guess, big kind of pillars of connectedness that we found that people kind of relayed in terms of their vision for a good life. They wanted to be more connected to themselves, to others, and to nature. So I won't go into all of this because I'm conscious there's not a lot of time, but I wanted to play a couple of videos. This is just people talking about I guess that journey of thinking about, well, what is the life I want to live, and how that feels.
Once you kind of start looking to the future, you kind of see that there are things that we should really be doing today that will help the next generation to come. The thing to remind myself of is make the most of it. Make sure that you're maximising time.
Yeah, I think just a well-balanced life. I think balance is key for me between work, life, family, friends, all of that. I think that's the key to a good life.
I'll have to learn to enjoy life a bit better.
Obviously gets me excited, I suppose. There's so much possibilities. Why am I not doing all of these things, you know?
So I guess what we found was, you know, when you ask people to describe a life they want to live, they describe sustainable living, but that's not the prompt. And so the lives that people really want to live are compatible with the world that we want to create. And that provides enormous opportunity to promote, I guess, these visions, right? So how do you bring people's visions for the future? We picked 2030 because that's when we need to halve emissions by, if we're sticking to the 1.5 degree target. How do you promote, I guess, storytelling and the emergence of this greater connection to self? So we spoke about, you know, how do you show what a restful, what a slower pace of life looks like? How do you offer people ways to reclaim their attention? We're all in the business of attention here, competing for attention. How do you offer people, you know, space to reclaim and think about what they really want? And, you know, in terms of connection to others, how do you show what close-knit community looks like beyond, you know, traditional family arrangements? How do you create broad networks of mutual care, like we saw in the last example around the underdogs? How do you kind of create and uplift these stories in a way that radio knows how to do so well? How do you then, in terms of connection to nature, invite people to do more with less and be outdoors and in, you know, healthy air and be participants in the world that they want to create? Because it's hard to get to that point, to get to that aspiration. You know, people feel like they don't have the time or the motivation to think beyond today. So it is about trying to create that time to reflect on the things that really matter to us, because what we found in the research was that was totally transformational. There were people that went through 3 days of talking about these values, their mindsets, their ambitions for the future, and changed their lives after that 3 days. There was one guy who put his house up for sale after doing it because he said he wanted to grow up in the next, you know, we wanted to see his kids grow up in the next 5 years with a place to play outside. Anyway, I won't keep going on, but what we did was we created a campaign for the good life then based on these insights to show how we can redirect people's attention to the things that really matter to them and the things then that are aligned with sustainable living. And this was the radio ad that we created.
This was going to be an ad for something you might not need. A little bird told us that you might prefer this. Let's advertise a better life. Find out more at goodlife2030.earth.
Does anyone recognise the voice? Sean Renane, you know, the ornithologist from Cork. There's a great documentary about him called Birdsong. So he gifted us all these beautiful audio clips of birds, and we collected people's visions then for the future on the website, and we had print ads, you know, for Black Friday showing less buying, more being on one side, with then, you know, the kind of the alternative on the other. And so just, yeah, the end is really just a call to action around how do you create that more imagined future? How do you create space for people to reflect? And the QR code is just to the website to input your vision of, you know, what would you like less of or more of in your life. But I think what we learned was there's a real appetite for this language around better living and a good life. It's not just about kind of saying we need to do all these things or change our behaviors, but actually how do we live in the world in a different way and bring that kind of community togetherness as a central part of that discussion.
Fantastic, lots of great work done there, I have to say, very impressive. Yeah. There's an interest in bringing up the good life. What was it, 1970s on BBC, and we're here in 2025 talking about leading a sustainable life, you know. I was actually watching something during the week where somebody back in the 80s was talking about having a planet to live in by the 90s, that everything would be destroyed, and here we are in 2025 talking about the same thing. So hopefully we'll have learned something along the way. Aishling, to Ocean FM and your experiences, I know you've brought in the Irish language into some of your endeavours as well. How did you work that?
Yeah, well, I'm not a fluent Irish speaker, really. I have made some programmes in Irish in the past, so, you know, I have a little bit of background there. But we do have 2 fluent Irish speakers in our newsroom, so that does make things a lot easier. I suppose our approach to Irish is that, you know, our franchise area has a very, very small Gaeltacht area, so most people are not fluent. But most people are open to the idea of hearing a little bit of Irish. It makes them feel a sense of inclusion. It, you know, kind of links them back to their childhood or what they view to be their heritage. So it's just about putting little smatterings in, not, you know, it's not that I would have made a whole 10-minute programme in Irish, in Ours to Protect, for example. We would have done other Irish language programming that's targeted for a more fluent audience. But it's still the same messages, yeah. Just in a different language. Yeah.
Yeah, I was interested to see people of different ethnicities learning Irish. And it sort of reminds you of your own heritage, something we forget sometimes. We forget about our own national language. And when you see people from different parts of the world, different ethnicities, of different lifestyles, embracing Irish and wanting to learn Irish, you suddenly realise, well, why don't I want to learn Irish? We should learn our own national tongue as well. And I know a lot of great work was done with Clara Sakar. To the Sound and Vision piece and the funding from Comisiún na Meán. What's your feeling on that? Do you think we should be doing this all the time in terms of, like, should it not be just a feature that runs for a few weeks and then maybe returns in a year's time? Should we be integrating this on a more regular basis?
Yeah, I feel really strongly that that's the case. I mean, I think when you referenced Ours to Protect at the start, you kind of spoke about people feeling a little bit lost or unsure where to start. And part of that is because environment is a really complex subject. You know, there's a lot of science that goes with climate change, with sustainability, and none of us are experts in that. And it kind of makes people, I think, pull back from the content a little bit. But if you're producing this stuff all the time and you're making connections with people in your area that are experts in it, then you're resourcing the whole station to cover this material better. One of the things that we did the normal hours to protect, but we also did so that was a pre-recorded feature that went out on the morning programme. But in our station, after a while, we kind of realised, well, what we want to do is to educate everybody and create connections, not just with the producer of Hours to Protect, but across the whole station. So we also did an in-studio interview once a month with somebody local about a particular topic. And what that does is create connections between the people who are working out in the community and the people who are working in the station. Not just one person in the station, but more than that. And I think resourcing people in local stations, we're all under a lot of pressure. There isn't, I don't think anybody in our station does just one job. But if there was space there, or some kind of impetus for them to integrate this kind of content into all programming, it would be really effective. Because the truth is that environmental programming, our topics, touch on every aspect of what we might be speaking about. But the presenter has to be tuned into that in order to trigger that conversation. So if it's about fashion, if it's about gardening, if it's about energy, that's there. But unless the staff of the station actually are aware of these connections and able to make connections in their own community with people who are expert, are able to speak to this, then it's not going to go anywhere. And yet, we spoke about community earlier, local stations, especially, say, for example, in our area, kind of full-service local broad format broadcasters, are the perfect vehicle for this kind of content, because they are kind of, what you say, amplifying the conversation on the street and creating that sense of community and connection. And environment is a great way to do it.
Or bringing the attention to people who necessarily are probably too busy in their everyday lives to have even thought about some of these things. But it's also true to say that it's broadened the canvas in terms of sales as well, because you are automatically bringing in the idea of selling new concepts, sustainable concepts, which can drive revenue within radio stations as well. Have you come across any of that happening, whereby you bring in new advertisers on board who maybe produce sustainable products and can add to the bottom line of a radio station's finance?
Well, it is about that linkages. I mean, all of the vast majority of our advertising is local. So it's about creating a network. So they know that you're there and you're interested in this, and you can add value to their normal advertising by integrating conversation around their area into other content. So certainly people would be more inclined to approach the station in relation to that kind of campaign than they would have been otherwise. It mightn't have even kind of been on their radar, let's say, especially a lot of these companies are new, they're have a different kind of focus, and local radio isn't really on their radar, so it is possible.
Thank you. Andrew, we spoke, sorry to bring it up again, your 20 years of experience. How has the attitude changed in across those 20 years from where it was to where it is now?
Sure, I will come back to that, but I just wanted to say Aishling's project addressing the Gaeilgeoir audience in her area is a perfect example of kind of what the importance of D&I is to everyone in this room. What lies at the heart of D&I is, in our context, is making sure that you address your audience, your own specific audience, and make sure that each and every subgroup, if you like, and I don't mean that in a tick box way, but it's speaking to those different groups and making them feel included in your output so that they see, and I know it's radio, they see themselves reflected and valued and included in your output. So that's kind of a perfect example of that coming full circle. And it was great that you were able to bring in the sales, the commercial side of it as well. I mean, perfect case study. To answer your question, the changes over the 20 years, so 15 of them have been in Ireland. I'm originally from London, but I got I got whisked away by a very persuasive man from Wexford. And I remember when I first landed, if you like, in Ireland, I turned on RTE and just thought, this is ridiculous. I can see black people, to make it personal, I can see black people when I go out in Kilkenny, where I live, but that's not reflected back on the screen. It's not reflected on the radio. And my own personal D&I journey started with a letter to RTE, to D Forbes, to say, how can you be justifying the license fee and not reflecting back what I see myself and what I see when I'm outside? And that kind of built and built and built. I became a real big mouth and kind of thorn in the side, I guess. And now it's landed at my role at Irish Centre Diversity, which is where I can be part of the solution rather than shouting from the sidelines. In that time, since I first arrived 15 years ago, I've seen huge amounts of change, and I think everyone in this room should be congratulated for, number one, prioritizing D&I and sitting here and listening to this kind of presentation, engaging with learning Waves Skillnet about the D&I work and supports that we can provide at the Irish Centre Diversity. And I have to call out, you've got to give praise where praise is due. There's been an incredible amount of change and progress. I always like to use the word progress. Incredible amount of progress in that time. I went from seeing nothing, hearing nothing, to then, we have figures like Zainab Boladali, we have Trish Archer. I don't know if Niall or anyone from Beat is still in the room. Trish Archer, I used to turn on Beat and be delighted to hear a black person. You might think, well, how could you tell she's a black person? Of course, we know that we live in a cross-platform. Radio is not just sound anymore. There's TikTok and there's all these other visual mediums. So I could see that Trish was black. And it was great to see and hear her input into shows. So you might think, okay, D&I, minority groups, how can you get the message across? It's in programming. It's in subject matters that are touched on. It's in comments from presenters. It's in appreciation for those different areas. So there's been incredible progress. Again, to reference Teresa and Learning Waves and the work that they do. It's things like the apprenticeships with the TY groups. It's access, it's access schemes that are giving opportunities and pulling in this wealth of talent that's out there. Diverse talent that's out there, these diverse perspectives that are out there, and helping stations to address their minority audiences, that's what it's about at the end of the day. It's about making sure that everybody that's listening to you, watching you on TikToks and all the rest, is seeing themselves reflected, is part of that party. And then what that does, apart from creating lots of variety and lots of sparkle and lots of opportunities, what that does is, and I'm kind of getting a bit political, and maybe I'm looking for the hook that's going to pull me off the stage. I know we've got Commissioner Naman in the room, and I think there's still a push for independent radio to get a share of the license fee. And I don't know where that's at, but it's not just down to RTE. It's down to all of us to make those sorts of changes and to address those issues. And it means that if the minority elements of your audience see themselves reflected, that's a justification for the license fee. It's, yes, I am seeing myself on screen. I am hearing presenters that look like me or have my values, have my experiences, are facing the same issues that I face when I'm out on the street and just interacting day to day. So, huge amounts of progress, but so much more to do. It's a race, not a sprint.
Yeah, and it's interesting to see the changes in terms of my involvement with radio, being 30 years in radio. It's always been about trying to get people to listen and bums on seats without being too crude about it. But if you think about it, our audience has changed in that period of time. And if we were to put it this way, if 20% of your audience were not from Ireland, that were listening to radio now, and we weren't talking to those people, we've lost 20% of our audience, which just seems outrageous.
And revenue.
And revenue as well. I just wanted to finish by asking the question, how will society view all of this, what we're talking about? I mean, in Radio Day conferences in 10 years' time, if we were in this room in 2035, wouldn't it be great to see a broader range of diverse people of all creeds, genders, enriching our industry? And the one thing is definitely for sure that only we can make this happen. Working within the industry, only we can make that change. So if we can bring audiences along, keep them entertained, and spread the good word. I want to thank our panelists for joining us this evening, to Laura, Aishling, and to Andrew. A round of applause.